Okay, 3, 2, 1, let's go. Welcome back, everyone, to Wheel Talk. Today we are back talking about some juicy topics. Brittany, do you want to say hello?
Hey guys, how are you? Thanks for joining us. I hope that more people are actually tuning in live, because as we get doing this more often, I think more people are, scheduling it in their calendar so that they can catch it, because it is fun. And even though we don't interact with you guys all of the time in the comments, we do read them and we do try to, try to make it interactive. So I'm really glad that people are starting to join more.
Awesome. With that said, the first thing I wanted to talk about was, number one, I wanted to congratulate you on your last video, because I thought it was absolutely fantastic. Definitely some of your finest work. Number one, I thought it was I'm sure it was scripted, but it definitely didn't sound like you were reading it, but there were hardly any filler words. Your communication was succinct and very clear. And to be honest, I loved it. Like the content was great, as in like the things that you spoke about. And I just wondered if you wanted to just chat on like how you got the idea for the video, how much I resonated with it, and then we can go from there.
It was actually scripted. So I was interested to see if anybody would ever notice the difference between the videos. So I started following a girl that is a Canadian YouTuber, and she scripts her videos and basically gave me like the method for it. And so I used that, which I think was really awesome. So I did notice people being like, oh, this was like a really good video. So yeah, I just wanted to throw that out there that it was scripted.
But it didn't sound like you were reading off of a script. That's what I mean. It sounded like very fluent. Like, so I couldn't see any sort of like auto or like, what do you call it? A prompter. So I want to ask you, like, how did you, like, it was great, man. I really liked it a lot.
So the girl that, and she's the first one that I've ever really talked to that showed like her whole process. I didn't even talk to her. I was just watching her video. So it makes it sound like I'm friends with her or something, but I'm not. She just has her phone or her laptop or whatever right where she is. She has her script in front of her. She looks down at like the 3 talking points that she wants to keep sort of in her head. And then she looks up to the camera and talks about those 3 things in almost exactly the same way she wrote them. And I thought it would be harder to sort of memorize 3 points at one time, but it really wasn't. And I think just having done it for so long, I can kind of know what I'm going to talk about. What the hardest part was the definitions of each emotion, because I wanted to have like a specific definition for each emotion so that people were like, isn't, frustration the same thing as anger and stuff? So I wanted to have those definitions, and that was hard because I was trying to get them word for word. Whereas the other ones were just more me saying almost exactly what I said in the script. So that's how I did it. I just looked down, I looked up, and because I was in the same position where the camera was, I could cut it really easily. And I just made sure to be cognizant of where my hands were when I was coming back to the video, because that's always the thing that I mess up is like, I am a hand talker. So my hands are always in random spots. So I was just more cognizant of that. But yeah, Katie Steckley is her name. If anybody's watching that is a YouTuber or that, has aspirations of being a YouTuber, and for yourself too, Fred. But you are you are way more eloquent and articulate than I am when you're talking in your videos just off the fly, because I'm not an articulate, eloquent person. But that's what I did.
Oh, well, that's, like I said, it's a very kind compliment. I think it's the English accent as well. People hear you talk with an English accent, especially if you're from North America, like, oh, he sounds distinguished. He uses long words. Yeah. But so the video was fantastic. Like I say, like the way you delivered it, it didn't sound scripted. Like I knew that it was scripted. I was like, you're not like just coming up with this on the fly. There's definitely a difference, but it definitely didn't sound like you were reading it. It sounded very, very professional. So well done.
That's awesome.
Well done.
I came up with the idea for the video off of another video that I had that was very popular. That was the 10 worst things about being paralyzed. And I try for the first 3 years, I tried to have all positive things, but I found that I know that for myself, when somebody is just always like positive, then it makes me feel worse about myself when I am negative or when I do have negative emotions. So I never want to come across like I'm always a positive person in a wheelchair and I never have these horrible thoughts. So just in the last year, I was like, I should probably like talk about my struggles with anxiety and like all this stuff so that if people are struggling with those things, they don't think that I am some, person to live up to. I am just a regular person that I try to balance these emotions. And I've talked about it a lot more in my newsletter, with like riding the waves and stuff of the emotions. And you learn, it's like a surfboard. You learn to ride the waves better as you practice more. And so I thought I should talk about that more on my YouTube channel rather than just in the newsletter. And yeah, I just was like, what's another spin that I could have on the 10 worst things about being paralyzed? And I was like, oh, well, what are all these negative emotions that I feel sometimes in like a span of an hour where I'm like, I hate that person because they can do that. I also love that person because they can help me. Like, it's just such a really interesting like mix of emotions. And yeah, I just wanted to bring light to that.
Well, it was great. I made notes. So the ones that you brought up were resentment, envy, anger, frustration, guilt, boredom, anxiety, and sadness. And there was a quote that you wrote, which I loved. I loved this. Nothing gets easier, you just get stronger, which is
Yeah.
so good. I can't believe I've never heard that before, but it is
Oh,
brilliant.
that one's gotten me through so much stuff.
So good. So yeah, there's a lot of what. So it's interesting because there were ones that I could relate to, and there were ones that I couldn't. So for example, I'm really, really capable of being able to sit on the sidelines and be super content with just being a spectator. I had a recent trip to a trampoline park this week with some friends for a friend's birthday, and I knew that I wouldn't be able to, I knew that it wasn't accessible. I knew that I wouldn't be able to bounce around on the trampolines, but I knew that I could be a good cheerleader and be like, oh, for example, there was a hoop which you could, dunk a ball into. And I was saying, oh, why don't you jump up and try and grab the hoop without the ball first? It'll be easier. And I was sort of like doing some little sideline coaching and cheerleading. And then everyone was knackered. And I don't know, I just felt like there were some things like sometimes, when you go somewhere and the things aren't accessible and you have to watch people do the activities that you can't do, it does suck. But for some reason, I'm quite good at like being a spectator and not letting that get to me. And I think it's something it wasn't natural because, it surprised me that still bothers you, 20 years down the line. And I wonder if like I'll go full circle and be like, oh, I used to be all right as a spectator, but now it really annoys me. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. I think honestly, it's just in the last maybe 4 years that it's bothering me more and more. And I think the problem for me is that my kids are now doing the things that I used to do at their age. So it's bringing up a lot of stuff. Like my kids are now like Jacob's past the age I was paralyzed. So there's a lot of things as he's aged into the age that I was as I was paralyzed, and I see him going through, what a normal teenager might have gotten through. I see him doing the stuff that I could have done at his age, and that I was good at. I was really athletic and stuff. So seeing that stuff, or just like trying to teach my kids, like when Jamie's in cheerleading and she's trying to do a cartwheel, and I'm like, oh my god, I'm like, I just want to I want to show her how to do a cartwheel because I was good at that. So I think that has brought up a lot of things that I didn't really process. And then other ways I'm awesome at being a spectator. Like I always plan games for a family reunion. So if it's like funny and I get to watch people do ridiculous things that I planned, then I am sitting on the sidelines laughing and like videoing and making like, being the cheerleader. So it really depends on like what it is that will bring up those like things of like envy. But yeah, it's interesting that like it never bothered me like as a teenager, even when I was watching people do things that I was good at, that never bothered me. It's only really as my kids have gotten to the age that I was when I was paralyzed, which is a really interesting thing. Like I should probably bring that up to my therapist because it's an interesting thing that it's coming up now after all these years.
Yeah. Well, thanks for putting that in perspective. On the subject of therapy, that was a fantastic ad read, by the way. I was like, sounds like she's just about to promote BetterHelp. Oh my God, and I didn't realize that you had a sponsor. I was like, oh, that was so smooth. It was very well scripted. Anyway, yeah, so that really helps put things in perspective, like, because you've got kids that are your age when you first got paralyzed. So of course you're like looking at the childhood that you never had when they go past. That must be hard. Tell me more about that. Like,
It's really interesting because I I missed a lot of things, and not because I was in a wheelchair. So this is a really interesting distinction for me to want to talk to people about. It was because of my mindset back then about being in a wheelchair. It had nothing to do with my wheelchair, because interestingly enough, there was somebody in my class that was in a wheelchair that had been paralyzed when he was 6 months old, and he did everything that all the guys did. He went hunting, he went quadding, he went to parties, he got drunk, and and that's not necessarily the teenage, experiences that I would recommend for everybody, but all of the things that all of his friends were doing, he was doing. And the reason that I wasn't doing them was because I was not independent. I couldn't pee on my own or like do bowel routine on my own. And it was because I just, was stuck for the first 5 years of my paralysis, because I had a horrible limiting belief system wrapped around my disability. So I don't ever want to tell people that I missed out on my like teenage years because I was in a wheelchair. And no, anybody that's in a wheelchair can have wonderful friendships, do tons of fun things. And as I got a little bit like more used to my wheelchair and more confident with my bladder and stuff like that, I would go and do fun things. Like my friends would piggyback me all over the place and all of that stuff. So I did go and do fun things, but I always had this fear that like, I'm going to pee, I'm going to pee, I'm going to pee. And it was because I couldn't cath myself. So I would go 12 hours without cathing. And of course I'm like worried at the 11-hour mark that my bladder's full. So, okay. So that's like the premise for that. And then, sorry, where were we going with this?
No, it's okay. I asked you like if it was to do with like your childhood, but also I wanted to. Good job you paused there, because I wanted to interrupt a little bit. Do you blame? Maybe not blame. I don't want to like. Do you think that your mum or your parents maybe enabled you to be so helpless? And how do you
100%.
feel about that?
100%. I never like place blame in that it was my mom's fault, because I know where her intentions were. So I come from it like from a place of, I love you so much for having dedicated so much of your life to me, because you loved me so much. So I come from a very like a place of gratitude
Of
towards
course,
my
yeah.
parents for what they did. But in hindsight, we both look back on that experience and know that her having accepted the challenge of caring for me was probably the worst thing that she could have done for my independence and my mindset in terms of what I was capable of. So, we both just look back and go like, oh, that's an unfortunate, thing that we both contributed to. And
Mm.
we try and educate other parents and people with disabilities. And now if I see anybody that's paralyzed at a younger age, I'm like, sticking your finger up your butt is never going to get easier. It's just going to,
You're going to get
prolonging it's
stronger.
never going to make it get easier. So just do it. And you're capable. If you have a functional hand at 13, 14, 15, it's not any harder, than if you're 18, 19, 20. So just do it now. And I've definitely I feel like I've helped other kids that have been paralyzed that I've been able to mentor. So I feel like it's been I would never want to go back and do it again, but I can use my experience to help other people from a place of knowing, rather than just being like, you should do this. I can teach them from a place of, I didn't do this and this is how it affected my life and my confidence and my ability to feel good about myself. So I
Mm.
don't recommend that. And if I didn't have that experience, I wouldn't be able to come from a place where people could really relate to me. I feel
Mm.
like it would be like somebody talking down to you. So I
Yeah.
feel like all of the slow learning experiences that I've had are just set me up to be a better teacher and a better, more relatable content creator. At least that's how I
Yeah.
justify it.
I love that. So people can learn from your mistakes, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah. I loved what you said about the cartwheel, because I remember thinking if I had kids and they had to get snowboarding lessons, that would be painful. I'd be like, oh, I would dream of like teaching my kids how to snowboard like at one stage in my life. But then someone actually said to me after my accident, they said, anyone can teach your kid to snowboard. There's certain things as a parent that are way more important than teaching them like physical skills like that. And I thought, oh, it was hit me at the right time. I was in a really dark place at the time. And I was like, yeah, you know what? I've got more to offer than just, anyone. There's so many snowboard instructors, but I guess you kind of, yeah, and also since my accident, I realized how little importance it is to be a good snowboarder, you know, especially as the climate gets warmer every year. You're like, it's a terrible niche skill set to value so highly. I have something to, I've made lots of notes here.
Yeah.
So there was something something I wanted to talk to you about. I'm going to try and explain the story. It's a hypothetical question. It's to do with spinal cord injury cures, but it's a hypothetical. So let me start with a small anecdote. So when I was in my darkest period, I was getting therapy. My sister really kindly paid for therapy for me. And I was with a lovely chap called Kelvin, and he was telling me about a guy who had a terminal cancer diagnosis, and he felt extreme peace. Like he'd made peace with the fact that he was, you know, his time on earth was limited and that he was going to pass through. He had family and friends around him. And then for whatever reason, whether it was a misdiagnosis or some sort of miracle cure, he was no longer terminal, and he ended up making a full recovery. But upon making that full recovery and having, you know, instead of having like a shelf life for your life and like, shit, I'm, you know, at the end of August, I'm gone, or, you know, the end, you know, I've got this amount to live. He had an unwritten script ahead of him. And over time, he started taking things for granted, like a lot. So he described this feeling of pure bliss, you know, when, oh, you know, life's so fragile, you know. But then afterwards, he would find himself taking more and more things for granted, so much so that his mental health declined until he was suicidal, which is kind of weird because you think you've beaten cancer, but then, yeah, so that's why he was talking to the therapist, and the therapist ended up overcoming it. So that is just a prerequisite for this hypothetical story. If there was a cure for spinal cord injury, because I think you alluded to this in your video, and you could just immediately, no hard work, just a click of the fingers, and you could be, you know, have fully working legs, fully working bladder, fully working bowel. Sounds like the dream, right? Sounds like the absolute dream. And I'm sure it would be for a time. For a time, it would be the best thing in the world. You'd be what's the cartwheeling around, you'd be you know, pooing with, you know, hands free. It would be amazing, and you'd be doing all these wonderful things. But after a while, I think there would be a time where, you know, homeostasis would balance out, and there'd be this equilibrium, and you would start taking things for granted. And also you'd lose your identity as a wheelchair user. You'd lose the, you know, all the people because as a wheelchair user, I do kind of feel special. And I wonder if all of a sudden you would feel invisible, because you'd be like, shit, like I don't get the attention that my wheelchair gave me. And as a hypothetical question, I thought it'd be really fun to talk about on the podcast. How long after a spinal cord injury cure would it take you to feel depressed about it?
Yeah. That's a really interesting question, because it brings to mind like this study that my light died. Sorry, guys. It brings to mind this study that I read that said people that are paralyzed 1 year later have basically reestablished the same level of contentness that they had before they were paralyzed. And that's kind of like what it would be the opposite way. If you weren't paralyzed anymore, you would reestablish the level of contentness that you had before you were paralyzed, or when you were paralyzed, and everything then would have its own things that you would take for granted. I think it would be, I'm gonna just go with that study and say that it would probably take about a year for your like thing to reestablish, where, you know, you don't wake up every day and be like, oh my God, I can get out of bed and put my feet on the ground. And that's not, you know, novel and, you know, new to you anymore. So I'm going to say it would probably be about a year when you would start to just forget, because I think
Yeah.
you really do. It's like when you have kids, and, you know, the first year of a baby's life is just crazy. And then after that year is done and they can walk and everything, you forget everything that was hard about those first years, and you start to, you know, take for granted a good night's sleep and all of that stuff. So
Yeah, because so I think it's really interesting because I think I know that there's a lot of people that suffer. Like, we've made really good lives for ourselves in
yeah,
wheelchairs, but I know that there's a hell of a lot of people that are really dissatisfied with being disabled. You know, whether it's nerve pain, spasms, and I'm sure that it sounds incredible, but like, I just definitely think there would be a time where you'd miss it in a weird way, and you'd feel guilty for missing it. And I think I can kind of understand what that guy was going through, where he kind of missed his, I don't know, you know what I mean? That wonderful feeling of being special, I guess. So yeah, and also, yeah, sorry, go on.
Oh yeah, I was just gonna bring up a little experience that I had over the weekend that, or during the week actually, it was during the week, but that kind of makes me think about this a little bit more, like the things that you would miss if you weren't in a wheelchair. Like people would think like you're not gonna miss anything, but there's a lot of stuff to miss. Like we went to, it's the legislature building here, so it's like the government building for our province. And my daughter went there with school, so she wanted to show me all this cool stuff, and she really likes school. So I was like, okay, let's go. And she's like, it's all wheelchair accessible, Mom. You're going to love it. So we went, and because it had specific entrances for people in wheelchairs and had very specific things because the building is very old, I got like such a different tour and experience than the people would have gotten. A security guard was escorting me up to the different floors. So I got to meet like 1, 2, 3 amazing, awesome, super awesome men that were like kind and were like showing me all this like cool stuff that nobody else gets to see. They're like, come back here. This is this special thing. And I was like, I said to my daughter, I'm like, this is why I love being in a wheelchair. Like all these other people on the tour, they had to wait in the main area. I got to go up the elevator like 20 minutes early because I needed to use the bathroom. Then I got to go see this special library. They got like, I just got escorted everywhere. Like it was so cool. And my daughter was like, this is way different than the school tour. And I'm like, yeah, it's so cool. And so I don't know, like there's so many things like that like it really is cool to be in a wheelchair sometimes, like just the people you get to meet and the fun, exciting things that you wouldn't otherwise ever even get to experience. So yeah, I don't know. It's such a hard question. Like, would you trade those like things for your legs and for pooping every day and stuff like that? I don't know.
And just imagine that you saw someone else in a wheelchair and you wouldn't have that, that unspoken, and you could go up and be like, hey, I used to be in a wheelchair, and they'd be like, yeah, whatever, mate.
Yeah. Or and then they'd be like, yeah, F you. Nice that you got cured, because there's definitely people like that. But I know it's just like it's like a weird thing. I just met somebody at like the park when I was dropping it was actually at the river. My family was going on a river float. And I wasn't going because my aunt was here having surgery. So I dropped them off. And there was just a lady that was a quadriplegic there. Actually, she had MS, but she looked like a quadriplegic. She parked right beside me. And then we had this like amazing like 45-minute conversation before I left just because I'm in a wheelchair. Like she just rolled down her window and was like, hey. And so then we like talked, exchanged numbers. And I was like, she didn't know anybody in a wheelchair. And I was like, oh, I'll introduce you to all my friends. And it's like that kind of stuff. Like you just don't do that with able-bodied people randomly at the park,
Yeah. No, I completely, I think it's analogous to is lottery winners. There are so many lottery winners that end up so depressed, Leah. There's a huge number of them that say, oh, the worst thing that ever happened to me was winning the lottery. So I think in a weird way, a cure for spinal cord injury could be a curse. And it sounds, obviously as a caveat, I'm not discouraging anyone. If you want to cure spinal cord injury, go for it. But you know what I mean? I think it could be a curse. Imagine if because we've become accustomed to a certain level of life. And I know I'm speaking definitely from a place of privilege, but imagine I got like a cure for spinal cord injury, and then all of a sudden I had to go and work as a laborer on a building site, and I'd be like, oh, for God's sake, like digging a hole for 10 hours a day. And I'd be like, oh man, in the rain. And I'd be like, oh, when I was in a wheelchair, I wouldn't have to do this.
It is a really interesting like concept, because some things in life get easier when you're in a wheelchair and some of them get harder. And I think that's just like goes to show that like no matter what you're going through, there are good things about it. Like when you're first paralyzed, you could never imagine that there's good things that you would miss about being in a wheelchair ever. Never. When I was first paralyzed, I never would have been like, yeah, I'm going to miss this if I get cured. Never. That never would have crossed my mind, because you don't know until you're in it, until you're integrated into the community, until you get to see all the good things. But it also brings up the good question. And I just saw like a video my brother sent me today, is that like the more you tell yourself that there's awesome things about it, the more awesome things you see. And the more you tell yourself that there's horrible things about it, the more horrible things you see. So I think it really depends, like I said in that video, like your perspective shift has to happen on a daily basis in order for you to see the good things. Because I know a lot of people that if people come up to them in their wheelchair, they hate that experience. They're like, just leave me alone. I don't want to talk to you. So, whereas for me, I'm like, I love it. I love being conspicuous. I love people talking to me. I love people noticing me. And for somebody else, that's a horrible experience. So I think the way you frame it matters.
Yeah. Well, on that note, last week we set you a challenge to journal every day, and I'm excited to find out, you know, did you do it or did you not?
I didn't journal every day. I missed 2 days. But I did journal almost every day. And then I journaled twice one of the days. So I guess
Wonderful. Wonderful.
Yeah.
Tell me about your experience of journaling.
Some days were harder than others because I actually had like prompts that I pre-wrote. So like I actually pre-wrote the prompts like for quite a few days in my journal. So that I would know what I was sitting down to write about. And it was kind of good and bad because sometimes I would sit down and I would have something that I was thinking about, but then the prompt would take me away from that thought. And then it would be just kind of be odd. So I'm not sure how much I like the prompts. Like it was helpful because I knew if I didn't have something I was, going to be writing about, then it would help. So I think that like I need to just put the prompts in the front of the book. And then if I need a prompt, I just flip to it and then like look at it. But it was good. It was really good. Like I thought I put 2 pages. I left 2 pages for each prompt. And like some of the days it was not long enough. And then some of the days it was too long for me to write 2 pages, which I think is like probably normal. I don't know, when you're journaling, you never really know what's going to come out of your, out of your brain when you're trying to think about something to write about. And some days you have so much stuff to put down on the page and some days you don't, but it was good. I thought it was good. It was just more of me trying to find the routine and do the things. Like this is another thing that I have to do. I have to do the things that are good for me in the morning because they will never happen if I do it later. And a few of the like nights I was journaling before I went to bed, which is actually really good to get stuff out of your head before you go to bed.
Yeah, I like that.
But it was like, when I'm tired, I'm like, I had to really like struggle to tell myself to do it if I did it at night rather than in the morning and just get it out of the way. But I don't want it to be a thing that I'm just like getting out of the way. But maybe for now it is. Maybe for now until I build that, habit, it is just a thing that I'm sort of checking off my list.
Yeah. So a couple of questions. You said 2 pages a day. That sounds like quite ambitious. What size are we talking?
Like this size.
Yeah, I mean 2 pages is quite a lot. Like I think people start with like just write down like 3 things you're grateful for. And then like 5. So I only do 5 things I'm grateful for, and then I do my ideal day prompt. But like take me through the prompts or a couple of prompts that you tried, and then because I'm interested to know if you set yourself like a really big task when I was framing it as a much smaller one.
Yeah. So a couple of the prompts that I wrote a lot about were write about something positive that happened to you recently that made you feel more fortunate. So I wrote quite a lot about that one because I was talking about an experience that I had with going for ice cream. Another wonderful thing being in a wheelchair, like this guy just paid for my ice cream. Like the guy that was working at the thing, and that happens to me all the time. Like no joke. I probably like once a month somebody pays for something and I'm just like, no, I don't need it. And they're like, please let me pay for it. And I'm like, I used to like really argue with them. And then somebody told me once that when somebody offers to do something nice for you, it's actually counterproductive if you argue with them about it because they're trying to give and you're trying to like stop the giving that they're trying to do. So now I'm just like, I try to just be grateful for it. So anyway, I wrote about that experience because this like, guy was like so nice. And now I'm like, I'm going to take him like a $20 tip sometime just because he was so awesome. So I wrote about that. Another one that I wrote a lot about was list some of the qualities in people that you admire. and why you admire those qualities. And so I was like, I wrote about like how I'm being very selective of who I admire these days, because I used to admire everybody for everything. And that made it really hard to be me, because I was just like, I felt crappy if I didn't aspire to be everybody and everything. So
Yeah.
now I'm really selective, and I just picked honestly like my closest family members and my kids and stuff, and the qualities in them that I admire. So I wrote a lot about that. And then one of the ones that was like hard for me to write about was name 5 things that make you smile. Cause I
Yeah.
was like, what does make me smile? It was really hard for me to think of
Yeah.
things that make me smile. So yeah, there was a couple of things that like were hard to write about. 5 objects in nature that you're grateful for, because how do you pick just 5? Like it was hard sometimes to write about things, but yeah, some of the ones
Nice.
I wrote a lot about.
Well, number one, that sounded like a fairly intense journaling exercise, and I was under the impression that you were just going to do some gratitude journaling for a week, to like reinforce the gratitude, and then we were going to talk about that. So I feel like maybe we got our wires crossed, but that does sound really good. I like those journal prompts; they were good. It reminded me of, it's not a journal prompt, but I have a little post-it on the bathroom mirror, and it just says "What went well today." So while I'm brushing my teeth, I'm always like, oh, you know what? Just before bed, like, what went well today? And I think of like, it's kind of nice to have those little prompts, so you don't have to think. So you have to think about it, but you don't necessarily have to write it down. But what made you go for those journal prompts?
There was just a website that I found that had 151 gratitude journal prompts, and I was like, I loved that it was like a very long, like it had a lot of journal prompts that I could draw from. So if I wanted to, I could put it in and it would take me through months and months of journaling.
Mm,
So that's why I picked those journal prompts, and then I just picked some of the ones that I was like, oh, these are ones that I think would be fun to write about. Even though like when I looked at some of them, I was like, oh, this would be awesome to write about. And then when sat down to write about it, I'm like, huh, because it was more an introspective thing. Like, what
mm,
does make me smile? I don't
mm,
know. Who do I admire? And then when I started thinking about like who do I admire, I found the list to be very small. And when I did this like 2 years ago with a friend through like a course that she was doing, I had so many people like um influencers and like, popular like
yeah.
people that I admired, and now I'm like I'm very selective of like who I choose to admire in this in like the public space, just
Mm,
because I you don't really know who they are as people, right? Which I'm
mm.
an influencer, I guess, or whatever. We're both influencers, so
Oh,
people
I
probably
hate that word.
I know, I'm, like, not really sure how to, like that's why always call myself a content creator, 'cause
Mm.
I do wanna have influence over people, I guess, but I
Yeah,
don't wanna I'm struggling with the, like, brand deal
yeah.
thing and whether I'm, like, comfortable with that, and if there's something that I think is genuinely helpful that I genuinely use BetterHelp, I take therapy through them,
Oh, good.
and I will talk about it, and if I think it's something that's beneficial, in more than one way to somebody in a wheelchair, but I'm struggling with that in terms of, like, influencer culture, because I cannot stand the, like, everything is somebody selling you something,
Mm.
and it's just annoying. So, yeah, influencer, that word influencers got
So
mixed
that's cool.
things.
I really enjoyed your ad read for
Yeah.
BetterHelp. It was flawless, seamless, really really good. And when did you get the sponsor? And do you have any other sponsors on your channel?
I am a brand ambassador for Coloplast, so every once in a while I will do something for them. I haven't done something on YouTube for them in a long time, because for them I used to do specific videos that were for them, but I found that the watch like on them was lower, because if it's a specific video for a specific brand, nobody's going to click on it. So
Mhm.
now I'm just like, if it's a brand that I enjoy, I'll just stick it somewhere in the video that somebody's already watching, because they're gonna click on it and then they might find something that's helpful for them, that's a brand, that they might enjoy. So but I'm still a brand ambassador for Coloplast. So I
Cool.
use their catheters. Yeah, you guys have Coloplast there, right? Yeah, it's
Yeah,
a
yeah, yeah.
you're
They
a company.
they
So
make my catheters too. Yeah.
yeah, so I'm them, and then I'm a brand ambassador for the cushion that I'm on, which is a Blake Medical. Um geomatrix hybrid cushion, and I got that brand sponsorship just from them seeing a review I did, and they like called me and were like, we got a person calling us from, it was like Madagascar or some crazy country, and they're like, they're saying they saw a video from Empowered Para about this cushion, and we were just wondering how the heck this person knew. So somebody like phoned them and said like, this video is how I found you guys. So then they
Nice.
contacted me. I got that brand sponsorship, and then yeah, this is the only other one that I've ever done. I think I've done a couple of reviews on things that people have sent free products of that were cool. Like I got a camera company sent me this thing for hooking a camera to my chair. So I did a review of that, and I just got the product for free. But I don't normally do it because like I don't know about you, but I probably get like 3 emails a week of like stupid Amazon products that people want me to review, and I'm like, no.
Oh,
No,
really?
thank
That's
you.
interesting. I didn't get anything like that, but
Do you put your email in your is your email in
yeah,
your description?
I got Fredo the wheelchair guy at
Oh, yeah, you do.
gmail.com, and I was like, yeah, that's a
Yeah.
nice one.
I love Fredo though. I love your YouTube like name. It's
Yeah,
awesome.
thanks.
Yeah.
So on the subject of I've got a story I want to tell, because there was
Yeah.
it's topical. It's to do with gratitude, and it's also to do with entitlement, and there were two weird feelings that I had, but I've written down food poisoning, explosive diarrhea, and gratitude. So please allow me to begin my tale.
Oh no.
So my friend Sai came to visit me this week, and he's a great guy. He's a German fella, and we met in New Zealand. We're the sort of friends that don't speak to each other for years, and then all of a sudden, within 10 minutes of him being here, we were talking about, deeping, meaningful conversations. In fact, the thing I said about the cure for spinal cord injury, that
Yeah.
was inspired from a conversation I had with him. Awesome dude, right? He invites me to have dinner with him and his friends, and they're so lovely. The Germans are so lovely because when you're around them, they'll all speak English
Oh.
and I'm like, wow, they'll just, okay, so we're speaking English now, like with each other, just so I can feel included. To be fair, the French do that as well, so they're lovely. Tell you what, who don't do that, English.
No.
But anyway,
We do not speak other languages.
yeah, I
Make other people feel
know.
comfortable.
So anyway, I get distracted. Anyway, I'm at this barbecue, and the guy gives me a burger, and I'm looking at it, and I'm like, oh, it kind of looks a little undercooked, but I'm like, I'm sure it's fine. I've eaten a medium rare burger before. As long as the meat's good, it'll be fine. You can see where this is going. I was on my bike, so I cycled back, and as I cycled back, I had these horrible stomach cramps, and I was like, oh my God, I really hope that's not what I think it is. And it was what I thought it was. So I got home, and I was like, oh no. So I was like, oh, I had awful stomach cramps. So as soon as I got home, luckily Christina was here. So I slammed onto the toilet, and I was like, oh, like really. And it wasn't like immediate diarrhea, but the cramps were awful. They were so painful. I was like, I got almost delirious. I was on the toilet for about an hour and a half, and I was like pleading with it at the end. I was like, oh, just come on, just finish me off. Like it's like almost having a fight. I was like, come on, just hit me.
I'm done.
Because
Yeah.
I was like, I just want it to be over. But all the while this was happening, I was flooded with gratitude. I was like, I'm so grateful that Christine is here. I'm so grateful that when I called out to her, she can bring me a bottle of water. And because my mouth was so dry, and she could bring me a bowl to be sick in, because it ended up coming out of both ends. And I was like, man, if I didn't have a bowl, if I didn't have, and I was so immersed in gratitude during this awful moment. And I don't know if you can relate to this. I'm sure everyone can relate to this, actually. As soon as it stops, as soon as you get a clear signal, it's over now. You're like, and then the body releases so many endorphins. It's almost worth it happening for the relief you feel afterwards. And I was just like, it's over. And I was completely empty. I probably weigh 3 kilos lighter. And I was just like, I laid over with my head on my seat cushion, and I almost fell asleep on the toilet because Chris was like, my love, are you okay? And I was like, oh yeah, I'm okay now. I'm okay. But bless her, as it was happening, it sounded like someone was dying in the toilet. It was absolutely painful. However, we can talk more about this, but I just want to say I had the complete opposite experience where I got my first payment from Google AdSense. So my channel got monetized like last year, and then it's taken so long for me to get my first payment, and it was meant to be 99 euros, and they took 30%. And I was like, what? So when people like donate and they're like, you know, give you a super thanks or whatever, YouTube take 30%, and then when they give it to you, they take away another 30%. And I was like, and I got paid 66 euros. And I was like, oh, that sucks. I hate getting taxed. And I thought, how entitled? Like, I've worked, you know, I've got this payment, I've got this money for free, which is allowing me to buy some groceries. And I was so like, oh, I hate paying tax. This sucks. But when I'm on the toilet, you know, I'm like really, really sick, I'm immersed in gratitude. And it's such a weird position to be in.
Yeah, it is interesting. I don't know. I've never had like, I don't even know how you do the like super thanks thing on YouTube. How do you set that up? I've never gotten like nobody.
I don't know, but sometimes when people like on live streams, for example,
Yeah.
or like with just people comment that they can just say, oh, thank you, and they donate like 10 euros. But it sucks because if you donate 10 euros to me, I get 3. And so I don't want to like
Really?
discourage. Well, I don't want to discourage people from. But
Yeah.
yeah, most of it's going to like the US tax service and YouTube. So I don't even live in the US. Like, why am I paying 30% tax in the US?
Yeah,
I
I
have
know.
no
They
idea.
still they take it's the withholding tax. I'm not entirely sure though about like how it works because when I did my taxes this year, I believe that they only take well, it looked like they only took the 30% withholding tax from the viewership that's American on mine. I was so confused when I was looking at the form they sent me and I was like, gave it to my accountant and she's like, I have to go ask somebody else about this because I don't have enough people that are YouTubers. But it's very confusing how they take the tax and how that all works. But yeah, it's interesting how much money they take. And I believe it's going up. Like I believe that YouTube is like beginning to take like more stuff, which is why this is just a shameless plug. But I know you have like the coffee thingy.
Oh yeah, like
What's it called?
coffee.
What's it called? What's the
Buy
like
me a coffee.
buy me a coffee? Yeah. So he has a buy me a coffee thing, and I have Patreon. So if you guys actually, you know, if you want to do the like super thanks or whatever, go straight to the buy me a coffee thing for Fred and Patreon for me. But I don't know if you can just do like a one-time thing on Patreon. My Patreon starts at $2 a month and goes up to 10 because I had it at like 30 and I was just like, you know, that's a lot. So I took it down to
Yeah.
just
So
10.
actually, I wasn't planning on talking about this, but tell me more about your Patreon. Because I'm thinking after that, I was like, man, like if I started a Patreon, like I guess I'd have to have something to offer. Like I offer the stuff on YouTube for free, so I'm not 100% sure what I could offer. But tell me about yours and like, you know, could I set one up?
Yeah, for Patreon, my patrons just get my YouTube stuff early. So I posted my YouTube video that's scheduled for tomorrow yesterday for them. So they get access to it early. So the $2 level and the $6 level, I think it is, get early access to my videos. And then every once in a while, like I shared like photos of taking my daughter to camp and stuff like that. So things that I just don't normally share. And I'm not very active on social media, but I am more active like with things like that on Patreon just because it's more private. And I just like feel like it's nicer to interact with people. And then at the $10 level, if you subscribe or you're like you go in that tier, then we do Zoom hangouts every 3 months. So people get to come on a Zoom hangout with the other people that are in the $10 level. And yeah, just it's mostly just like hanging out. Like it's not anything super planned. I came with questions last time, but people were pretty shy. The first 2 Zoom hangouts that I had, it was when my Patreon levels were higher. So it was a $30 level. So my first one, I only had 2 people. My second one, I only had 1 person. So I got to know this one guy, Chris, and his wife really well because they've been like patrons for a long time. And then I was like, I assumed and I want it to be open for more people. So I was like, people obviously can't afford the $30 level. So I'm going to take it down to just $10 where they get the Zoom hangout. Cause really I want the whole point of Patreon is to interact and engage with subscribers that enjoy my content. So yeah, mostly it's just early access and then a couple other perks, but I still want to keep my content entirely free for people that need it. Yeah, I would love to start like a coaching program, like rehab coaching. You should do it with me.
Yeah, yeah.
This is like a you should do it with me. I really want to like rehab coach people like when they're like in the hospital. I want to like guide people through like their rehab and like be sort of a person that can coach them.
Yeah, that
So
sounds good. Yeah.
I would love to do that. And I have like an idea for which I'm sure I've talked about on my channel before. It's called Rehabilitation Roadmap. And it takes people through like the most important parts of getting back to who you want to be essentially. And it takes them through like bowel and bladder and like wheelchair maintenance and like all the things that I think are super important. And then it brings together people that are all in rehab at the same like module, and we would do like Zoom hangouts. So it didn't matter where you are in the world, you would be able to like do this rehabilitation roadmap together and sort of support each other and stuff. So I have that idea too, but
That's a great idea. That's a fantastic idea.
yeah, for now it's just my YouTube and Patreon. I am not organized enough as a person. I feel like I need to get more organized as a human being just in general. But
I
yeah,
think
Patreon
what
is really great.
I think the reason why your Patreon is because you have a regular schedule upload, and I think I tried that once before, and it felt a lot too rigid. And I don't know. I don't even know what like I'd want. Like to be honest, I was pretty happy with getting $100 because it's going to pay for like the Starlink for a couple of months. I literally got Starlink installed just so I could record online podcasts and give them to people. So like I don't want to like profit, but I
Yeah.
wouldn't mind like, you know, some people supporting the channel in that way to be like, oh, hey, listen, I was hotspotting off my phone quite happily, but you know, I got Starlink installed just so I could make, you know, be able to do live streams, be able to do stuff like that. And you know, obviously I'm benefiting from having Wi-Fi, but yeah, it's interesting to yeah, I would like people to support me financially, but at the same time, I don't know what they'd want in return and whether I could live up to that. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it is a really that I struggle with that a lot in terms of like whether I'm living up to what people are paying for kind of thing. But at the end of the day, like for me, and I put this on my Patreon. I said like for me, it was a choice between spending more time creating content or working because I have a job and I can't do both like all of the time. So I either have to, which I still have to work as a teacher because I can't, you know, I have to pay my bills. So I put that on Patreon. I said like this is the reason I opened it because I really like creating content. And if you guys enjoy my content and you want me to continue creating it because it was a lot and it is still a lot like on my a demand on my time. And like if I added it up, like because I think like on my YouTube, because this is just like full transparency, like I want to be open to people. I make between like $300 and $500 a month, like with my ad revenue. And then on my Patreon, there's not that many people on it. It's like $75 a month. So that's basically paying for my like epidemic sound, my like editing software. So like again, it's just paying it's like I'm making $0 an hour as a
Yeah.
content creator, but I like creating content. And like you said, you like I'm not in it to profit off of like the people that are watching me because I know how hard it is to be in a wheelchair. And I really do someday want to open up to having like the course that I just talked about, the rehabilitation roadmap or private coaching, because if people can pay for that, I would love to be able to provide them with support in that way. But yeah, it's a struggle for me. I have money blocks in my mind about charging people that are struggling for information that is super valuable or even for my services. And I have other
Yeah.
friends that try and like, you know, change my mindset about that, like doctors charge and people
Yeah.
are sick and stuff, but it's really hard. It's really hard to do that. So I think
Yeah.
it's like good to be in the niche we're in, but it's also a struggle because we know how hard it is financially to be paralyzed.
Yeah.
And
Another concern that I had was if I got too little Patreons. So like if I was making like $8 a month off Patreon, but that was holding me accountable to an upload schedule that wasn't, I'd be like, what am I doing this for? So, but I don't want to let the people on Patreon down, kind of thing. And I don't know, it's been sort of, and then also what is it, like, I like creating content, but as soon as you monetize it, does it take away the joy? Does it feel like a job? Like, so yeah, I've sort of gone through a lot of different, but how have you must have gone through the same feelings?
I'm still going through those same feelings, which I'm really struggling with the brand partnership aspect of it, because it can be lucrative to partner with brands. Like if you're big enough, like the girl that I was telling you about that at the beginning with the content creation type of like how I was scripting it kind of thing. She discloses how much she makes, and she has like, I think she has like, I don't know, 100,000 subscribers or something like that. And she made $250,000 on brand partnerships last year. And they're very aligned with her brand. But it's advertising for other companies, right? So that can be very lucrative. And so I wrote down a value system for me in terms of like, if I were to do a brand thing, and every brand I work with has to be willing to give something away to the people that I am advertising to. So if I genuinely use their products, and I have to genuinely like, use, and trust their products in order for me to ever talk about them. And if I genuinely think it's going to benefit my community, I have to be able to give something away for free. I was in talks with like it's Permobile, but they own Panthera now, and they own Tylite. They were going to give me a wheelchair to give away for free. So like I'm like that kind of stuff. If I have to have something that I can give my community, which has been really good. Like Coloplast gave me 2 giveaways of $1,000 of catheters twice a year. And so like they're good with that kind of stuff, but I struggle a lot with that mentality in terms of like the monetization piece, and like how what's morally okay to do. Just because other people are doing it doesn't mean that I feel good about doing it. And there's so many people out there that are creating courses that they're charging thousands and thousands of dollars for, and know your worth and all that junk. And I'm like, okay, well, you're still making so much money off of all these people. And I've seen so many people like teaching people how to go get a loan from the bank in order to buy their course. And I'm like, who are you? You realize you're putting somebody in debt to fund your lifestyle, right? Like that I would never do that. So rest assured, if you're watching my channel, I don't do anything that I don't feel is morally like right to do. So I don't know.
Nice. Oh, that's cool. That's cool. I don't know where to go from that. Oh, there was something else I was going to talk to. I can't really figure out a way to segue into it smoothly enough. But so I heard this quote. I'm gonna go for it. I heard this quote recently. It said, "Comfortable relationships require uncomfortable conversations."
Ooh.
And it prompted me to bring this up because I had a uncomfortable conversation with Christina recently, and I think we handled it really well. And I think I wanted to highlight it because the last time I spoke about it, it was quite a popular topic, and it's not that much to do with being in a wheelchair, but it's a lot to do with I think I said to you before, like unspoken expectations can be premeditated resentments. So what happened was she came in, and actually this story's got a hilarious twist at the end. So she came in, and she had noticed that I hadn't watered the plants outside. So she had gave me some tomato plants and stuff like that. And I said, oh, I was just about to do it. I'm sorry. And then she got quite upset. And I thought initially that was an overreaction. And then and I was like, look, I'm sorry, but I'm in a pretty good mood. Like, you've come in, and if you're going to be a buzzkill, why don't you try again? Like, come back in. And she was like, okay. So she went and sat in her van, which gave us space. And I let her take her space in the van. And she came back in, and she'd obviously been crying. And I thought, oh man, like and me being like, not until I realized what had happened. I thought she was still overreacting. I thought maybe she's a bit emotional because she's like near her period or something like that. And I was like thinking, I'm still in the right, you know. Anyway, we had this wonderful chat, and I allowed her to communicate with me, and she said to me that it wasn't the fact that I wasn't watering the plants. It was the fact that she felt that I was being very ungrateful. She had put a lot of time, effort, and resources into getting that garden up together for me. Like those plants were a gift, you know. She bought the seedlings, she planted them all, and for every time she comes around, she thinks I'm neglecting them. It sucks for her, you know, like it hurts. And I was like, you know what? I am so sorry, but like I had no idea that's how you felt. And I feel like such a dick, and I feel really ashamed. I genuinely thought you were really overreacting, and now you've explained that, I realized that maybe you weren't, and I've actually been a bit of a knob. And you know, all I can do is, you know, hand on heart, apologize and say, you know, I feel ashamed and embarrassed, and I will look after those plants because I am being a little bit ungrateful, which is ironic because I always bang on about bloody gratitude. And it was just such a beautiful communication. It was something that went from being something really bad to bringing us really close together with just this honest chat. And I thought, I just wanted to bring it up, because it's one of those conversations don't happen very often. Like how often, and I think the longer you're in a relationship, the harder they are to bring up. And I just love that we've got into this habit of communicating. And also, I love that she's holding me to a higher standard. She could easily just be like, "Oh, I've got a lazy boyfriend," but she's like, "I don't like that you're lazy." And I'm like, you know what? I don't like that I'm lazy, but when you enable it, when you tolerate it, it allows me to be even more lazy. And you know what? Now you've communicated how upsetting it is. You know, I will definitely do better. So yeah, I
Especially
wanted to
since
just
all you have to do is go out and water the plants. I mean, come on, Fred. Like, all you have to do is water them. I'm just kidding. Is it
yeah.
hard? Like, do you have to hook up your hose, or like, what was that? What was stopping you from watering them?
I just didn't think they needed that much water,
Oh,
and I was impatient with them, like how slow they were growing, and I just hadn't had the enthusiasm. Like when we first started the garden, I was like, "Oh, this is going to be great," and I very quickly went to like, "Eh." And I'm not I'm ashamed of myself. Like I don't like,
oh.
you know, I'm not proud of myself. Like it was
I
something
can
that
relate. I can relate to the like thing about the garden because I really, really want to love it so much. But I think it's like one of those, it's a great lesson in delayed gratification because you can't rush whatever nature is doing to create the sugars and the like it's literally capturing carbon dioxide from our like atmosphere. It's taking nutrients and minerals from our earth and turning them via chemical like reaction into other biological things that like we eat and use for like sustenance, but we're like, Jesus Christ, can't you just hurry it up? Like, what is wrong with you? Like, you're
yeah.
making me wait like 2 months to like, it is a very interesting like thing that yeah, so I do understand that. And it's funny that like just yesterday I had like same experience, a similar experience with like not watering something. And then it was just like, oh shit, you know, but
Yeah.
that's a beautiful example of like how we take our side of something and we what am I trying to say? We like make it bigger and we ignore the other person's side of things. And then when we realize where that thing is coming from, it's not insignificant in any way. Like we make our feelings more significant than somebody else's. And you didn't see necessarily like the love and the, you know, the things that she was feeling while she was putting that garden together. And it was a symbol for her of like her dedication to you. And for you, the plants were just the plants, you know?
Yeah. And to be honest, I like plants. I've got like quite a lot of plants in the house. Like I really enjoy plants. I feel like I've been really quite lazy lately. I feel like I've been in a bit of a slump. I mean, time's getting on. I'm not really going to talk about that now, but like, yeah, when you get into a bit of a slump, I've been consuming too much content. I mean, crikey, man, Trump got his ear shot. Like
Seriously,
culturally,
I know Biden stepped down, like so much stuff
mate,
going on.
it's huge. It's like the Kardashians for people with IQ. You know what I mean? Like it's honestly, man, it's like this season of America, season 5. You couldn't have scripted it, but I'm like watching how many different angles of Trump getting his ear shot and being like, oh my God, he turns out to be the hero. He's like this pantomime villain that I'm kind of liking now, but like not as a presidential candidate, but as a character in a show, you know, like, oh, you know, he's quite a likable guy. Yeah. But it's so bizarre. So I'm trying to like not be lazy, but at the same time, there's so many distractions all the time, and it's all on my bloody phone, mate.
It's so many annoying. Distractions. You know what's funny? I don't have my other one in here. So I actually got a new phone. This is how ridiculously distracted I was from my phone. So I got a new phone that has nothing on it except YouTube, because I do answer content or I answer comments on here, but it has no Snapchat, no Facebook Messenger, no Instagram, no TikTok, no nothing. It has just the stuff like my email, my YouTube, and my phone and my text messaging. And that in itself is just distracting enough, I'm finding, that I'm like, holy shit, just talking to people and interacting with like, you know, YouTube subscribers is distracting enough. But I've answered more comments in the last like 2 weeks than I have in probably 2 months, because that's the only thing that I have on my phone. So I'll go on there and I'm like, oh, I'm enjoying this again. Like, it's sometimes comments can get like, I love all of you guys watching. I love you guys so much. And I read every single comment. I just don't have the energy to answer every single one all of the time in a genuine way. So if I have a very genuine answer, then I will take the time to answer it. And if not, if you get a like from me or just like a little heart, I read the comments. I really do. But yeah, so that's how distracting this was. So on my old phone, which is just basically like, you know, hooked up to the internet now, I intentionally have to go, if I'm going to go on social media, I've intentionally go find that old phone and like go on it. And it's way better. But yeah, so much distracting content lately, like just information.
I know, like it's honestly like reality TV, man. It's like you don't have to watch anything on Netflix, man. American politics is the juiciest, you know, reality drama going on like concurrently right now. Culturally, everyone knows about it as well. It's not like oh, did you see that thing last night? It's like, yeah, everyone saw it. Like
everyone saw it.
It's just
Canadian politics. If you want to dig deep into the most crazy government in Canadian history, just go illegal things that Justin Trudeau has done. And then it'll be like, why is this guy so, like, I'm telling you, you'll find it so interesting too. Just
he was so popular. He was like the Prince Charming. He was like people compared him to like Disney princes, you know, like the handsome guy who's now in charge of the Anyway, let's move away from
politics.
On the subject of social media, though, I do have a clip lined up for us today.
I watched it this morning. I can see the one you're going to show.
Yeah. So on the subject, let's watch the clip and then I can talk about it. Here we go. This is the first time I'm doing this. Check it out. Does it work?
Yeah, it's there.
Perfect. This is me at the gym yesterday morning, and I've got a resistance band and a catheter. And I put the catheter through the resistance band to hold me.
Yeah, I was like, what are you doing with that catheter? And then I was like, oh, I see.
And then I proceed to do something I've not done before, well, for a long time, since rehab. But yeah, like pull myself up with a weighted pull-up while being attached to my wheelchair.
You're so strong. I am not, like, just your strength in general is very impressive, but like your pull-up form, like I agreed in the last video, I don't know if it was your trainer or whoever was telling you this is the first time she's never had to give feedback on form. Like your form is like so good.
Thank you very much. I think it could definitely do with some improvement there. That was not perfect. However, so I put that on Facebook because I can't do Instagram. Honestly, anyway, that's another conversation. I put it on Facebook, and then I felt like, oh, I've put a video on Facebook of me doing something impressive. I wonder who's commented on it. And I was like hovering over the button to like push it. And I remember thinking, oh, that draw, it's like juicy. It's like, oh, like who's liked it? Who's commented? And I felt like yeah, I mean, that's just that. And then once it draws you in, then it's like, oh, here's some really addictive videos. Stay on the platform for as long as possible, please. And so social media, it's a place where I want to share my proud achievements, and a place where I hate to spend too much wasted time.
Yeah, it is really hard, but like, I'm more and more, I'm trying, and this is like, I don't know if you like, I'm trying very hard to be more, content consumer of, sorry, I can't talk. I want to consume more content from the people that I actually know. So I'm trying to consume content from people that I know and care about and that I want to actually like view their stuff. So like if I'm on Facebook or something, I'll specifically like, I saw your thing, I'll see like a friend's thing. Like I go on specifically just to like see things that I want to see from people that I'm interested to see, which is one thing I really like about Snapchat. I don't know if you're on Snapchat, but they have Snap stories. And it's just your friends that are in your phone contact list. And you can add Snap. Well, you can add Snap. I get not phone contact list, actually. That's WhatsApp. So Snapchat is like a handle like Instagram, but you only see Snap stories from people that you actually follow. And so it won't like put in other people's stories, and you have to specifically go and click on their story in order to like see it. So I really like that about Snapchat. So I'm following a friend right now who's in Brazil in a wheelchair, and I'm following his stories every day so I can see what he's doing. That way I'm not on Facebook. I'm just following him directly for the things that he is posting and where he is and stuff, which is really nice. So, yeah, I'm not really sure about social media in that regard, but I think it's very valuable in terms of like reaching people, which is why I struggle with it a lot. I've said this before. I struggle with that.
Yeah. Right. So I think that's our time, ladies and gentlemen. We've just run over by a few minutes. There was another thing I wanted to chat to you about, but I'll talk to you about it when we end the stream. But yeah, thanks a lot, everyone. Thanks for tuning in, and we will see you next Tuesday. Bye.